Hi, my name is Ophi YouTube Videos. I am a feminist and a lesbian, and I make conversational commentary videos about both of those things. Did you know that a fairly well agreed upon feminist issue used to be that the glamorization and glorification of disordered eating is bad for women? I'm being gendered in this video not because eating disorders actually only impact women, but because women are something like 3 times more likely to suffer from this kind of food restriction than men are. And though I'm not being super specific about which media phenomenon kicked off my recent concern about all of this, that too is primarily marketed towards women. Trigger warning here, obviously, we are talking about eating disorders and about disordered eating. I'm just having a conversation that I know is going to get me yelled at, get me told that I have no right to comment on a person's body, and I have a few rebuttals to that, though I tend to get comments as though I never provide any nuance to my arguments, so we'll see if it works. In the interest of not speculating on a specific body, though, and not calling for a witch hunt against someone who I think is also likely a victim of the machine that she is a pink glittery cog in, I don't plan on naming the actress who spawned much of this conversation in this video. You probably have already picked up on it from just the way I titled this video, or you will when I say, yeah, I've also noticed it. I'm also extremely concerned about just how thin the pop star is in the musical movie of the year. And even just that, and the fact that I'm making this video, will be enough that people will say I am commenting on her body anyway, that I am speculating and being rude and dangerous. And to all of that, I say, okay, maybe this conversation is a little bit impolite, and many impolite conversations are also completely unproductive, but not all of them are, and I don't think that this one has to be. I'm not showing you pictures of this actress. We're not like poring over all of this together. I'm trying not to vilify her for all of this, and I don't think any of us should. But I also am not going to be so scared away by the thought-terminating cliche of we shouldn't talk about other people's bodies that I let it defang my feminism, and I think you shouldn't either. I have noticed a handful of people who have attempted to speak about this be immediately shut down, like I said. Thought-terminating cliche. And when I use that language to describe a train of thought, I'm not doing it in a holier-than-thou, couldn't be me, I never use thought-terminating cliches kind of way. I'm doing it because I also noticed myself using that thought-terminating cliche on myself. Thinking about something just long enough to think, oh shit, I shouldn't really think about this. Or, oh, I can't talk about that, that's rude. Which, yes, I will say again, for many, many reasons, speculating and commenting on people's bodies is rude, because it is just that, speculation. And I'm not actually attempting to speculate about this actress on a granular level. I'm not referencing disordered eating as a means to diagnose this person with that issue. I don't have any true basis to do that on, and even if I did, it wouldn't be my place to diagnose somebody with an eating disorder. But I am referencing disordered eating in connection with this actress because disordered eating connects itself to her and so do the cultures around it. And disordered eating can be a much more sort of communicable thing than whatever individual health concern might actually be driving this aesthetic change. Like I said, it's a video that's going to get me yelled at. I already know that I will be told that I'm trying to make the argument that I think people suffering from this kind of disorder, or even who look like they might be, should be hidden away from public life, which, to be clear, is not what I'm saying. I'm not calling for this actress to be punished or sequestered or, held to account for her appearance. Not only would that not be helpful, it also just does not cohere at all with my worldview. Another thing that doesn't cohere with my worldview, though, is a $300 million marketing campaign that rubs the glorification of a body type that can come with very lethal consequences into young girls' faces, and a quiet, polite, agreed-upon consensus from even the other feminists in the room that this is just something we simply have no right to comment on. So I'm making this video because I am commenting not on this specific body, but on the machine that this body is in, the industries that this kind of body is being commodified by, and who it is being sold to, which we should be very clear about is children. Little girls who dressed up as the leads of this movie for Halloween, who have mothers who have loved this show for years and are excited to bring them out to the movie theater and to watch it with them on repeat at home once it's out. And another thing that we should just face is that there are things that those little girls will internalize. Things that we are told and that we are telling each other not to comment on, because it would be commenting on a woman's body, which would be impolite. My argument, though, is that it's naive to imagine that what is truly happening here is that a body, a very, very thin body, is actually being presented without comment in a neutral way, and that when somebody mentions it, usually in a concerned way, that they are then breaking an agreement to not comment on a body. When a body is glamorized, when a body is famous, when a body is put on a pedestal as a sparkly, shiny pink princess, it's not being presented without comment. The comment that is being presented with this particular starlet's body is, this is good, this is aspirational, this is attainable. And then, any comment at all that is being made to the contrary, backed as those comments are by much less power than the marketing machine behind the movie musical, behind like the weight loss industry, behind Eurocentric beauty ideals, all of that is being shouted down and told that it is mean and told that it is rude and that it is impolite. Yeah? You want to come up here? Come on up. Hello. Something I think is impolite, though, and impolite in a way that I think has more far-reaching consequences than potentially making a starlet feel bad about her appearance, are some statistics. According to the National Association of Anorexia Nervosa and Associated Disorders, by the age of 14, 60 to 70% of young girls are already attempting to lose weight. 22% of children and adolescents have unhealthy eating behaviors that could lead to an eating disorder. And a study found that 8% of 15-year-old girls are dieting at a severe level, and their risk of developing an eating disorder is 18 times greater than their non-dieting peers. About 12% of adolescent girls have some form of an eating disorder, but just 20% of those adolescents with eating disorders seek treatment. Being thin, of course, does not always correlate to having an eating disorder or any kind of trouble actually nourishing yourself. Eating disorders also don't always correlate to thinness or even a desire for thinness, and while this is a restriction-focused conversation, as many about eating disorder recovery are, it isn't the entire conversation on disordered eating, and I am nowhere near qualified enough to be having the entire conversation about this. I did, however, speak once already about the concept of thinspo and spaces like eating disorder or ED Twitter on my channel already before. That was when I was noticing a trend before I quit Twitter of people quote tweeting people who exist in spaces like that glorify disordered eating to try to fight with or embarrass them. And I spoke about feeling like that is just unproductive both to the people who they were trying to fight with and embarrass, because it would make them double down and feel like the rest of the world truly just doesn't understand them. And also I spoke about how it's unhelpful to the people who were following the person. Big jump! Good job! I also spoke about how it's unhelpful to the people who were following the person who was doing the dunking, because now they are exposed to content they didn't want to be exposed to that glorified disordered eating and might be a trigger for them. Thinspo, eating disorder Twitter, spaces that promote the explicit glorification of eating disorders, by which I do mean a slightly different thing than the promotional campaign for this movie, which hits a lot of the same notes for me. Those are a sort of death cult, is what the difference is. And it makes both interacting with and speaking about them extremely difficult, but extremely necessary. What I'm advocating for isn't for this celebrity to be hidden away from public life or to be criticized as if this is something she is doing on purpose. In many ways, she is just as much a victim of the culture she shares with her viewers as the young girls who will doubtlessly attempt to imitate her size are. It's just that what I'm advocating for is maybe, I'm sorry, taking our heads out of the sand about it. As I discussed in my video about separatism, I recently read Feminism is for Everybody by Bell Hooks, and in it, back in 2000, Bell Hooks spoke about the glorification of restrictive eating as a feminist issue. I'm not saying there was ever a time where feminists all agreed with each other, but I am saying that it used to be more of an agreed upon issue than it currently is. I do know many feminists who are still concerned with the glorification of eating disorders and food restriction, though, including Kat Tenbarge, who I have borrowed this framing device of not naming explicitly the person who we're speaking about from, because she tweeted about this. And when we chatted a bit as I worked on this video, she told me that, as I had suspected but never really gone and confirmed for myself, this particular celebrity is something of an icon in spaces that glorify disordered eating. And while this isn't that celebrity's fault necessarily, it is a thing that one could possibly feel a sense of responsibility about and a need to distance themselves from that this starlet does not seem to feel. I think my feelings about a lot of this would be very different if, rather than I feel the best I've ever felt and everybody talking about my body is mean, the things that this actress was expressing were that her body type shouldn't be one to be striven for, maybe, or just that she doesn't want to speak about it at all. But again, my concern with all of this is just, if the only comments that are acceptable to express about this starlet's body are that she feels very good, and also all of the unspoken comments from the industries propping her up, what other ideas are we giving to the young girls who are growing up and seeing this that they can sort through? Are we offering any? And even casting that question aside, because it is a bigger question than any that I can answer, who am I serving by refusing to call this irresponsible thing I see happening irresponsible? Am I serving the people who my feminism is meant to serve? Young and vulnerable women and children who are at risk of developing the most deadly mental illness? Or, if I agree that this is just not something I'm allowed to talk about, am I serving the PR wing for a starlet's media campaign? Or worse, the $1 million marketing industry push that she's part of? Because I don't want to serve any of those things. In fact, I find my lack of desire to serve any of those industries to be a more compelling feminist issue than my desire to not be impolite about a person's body. And yeah, I don't really know how to square that, as is obvious by how awkward this video is and how weird it is to talk around all of this. I just think that it is still worth trying to square, and I think it's worth examining what's going on when I keep shutting down every thought that I have about something. Like, another thought that I kept having that I was trying to shut down about my complaints about this is like, okay, even if something was happening and this starlet was sick, obviously production was never going to just shut down until she was feeling better. That's not the world we live in, so what did I want? But like, why can't it be? Why can't it be? And that's another big question that I couldn't possibly find the answer to. The people finding answers to that kind of questions would be like actors' unions, probably. But that there is a job for the feminists somewhere inside of that job of figuring out what the actual logistics for something like that would be. And that job is just that we need to comment on something wrong when it is happening right in front of us. It's impossible for us to ever get any closer to the kind of society we want to live in where a production might have paused for something like that if there was a medical emergency happening, if we refuse to comment on this kind of thing when it's right in front of us just because someone cooked up a good enough reason for it to be impolite for us to comment on it. I also want to say, like, even the way Bell Hooks describes disordered eating in Feminism is for Everybody is not exactly how I would word things or want them worded. I think, at least in the relevant chapter of the book, she has a tendency that a couple of feminist thinkers I've seen have had on the idea of anorexia or disordered eating, where they kind of flatten down people who suffer from restrictive eating disorders into being people who operate from maybe a less complex set of reasoning than they might operate from. Another reason I just wanted to mention that it's not always only motivated by a desire for thinness when people have a disordered eating behavior. But I did still appreciate reading what she said, even though I don't really feel like the quote is quite relevant enough for me to pull into this video. And I do want to toss the question to the nuance corner here. Do you know of feminist thinkers who speak about disordered eating in a way that is both explicitly feminist and also kind of gentle and useful? And, you know, if we haven't done a great job of amassing that yet, that's even more reason that even if it's not a conversation that we personally want to participate in, we should be really challenging our own urge to shut down other people talking about this kind of thing. We gotta let our thinkers philosophize, even if it troubles our enjoyment of a big movie. And the movie being big is another reason, probably most, of why this matters. A reason why I'm making a video speaking about this, but I would never about, say, a particular social media influencer who is also extremely small and who we do actually have confirmation struggles with restrictive eating in particular. I would never, ever make a video about, like, Eugenia Cooney. I wouldn't do that. It doesn't mean that I'm not deeply concerned about Eugenia Cooney, and you'll notice I have kept my personal concerns for this starlet and her safety out of this video, not because I don't have them, but for a few reasons. One being that the whole point of my concern about this is how it impacts the young girls who will grow up with this as part of their culture, so I wouldn't have much of a leg to stand on if I couldn't make this argument without relying mostly on that, which I have. Another reason for keeping my personal concern from this actress out of it is that while, yes, I do have a bit of parasocial concern for her recovery and for how much more complicated that recovery inevitably will be once she has been so exposed, once dolls have been sold of her body in this state. Even with that concern, I am extremely aware that this actress is in a position of some really intense privilege. She is surrounded by a team of people who have a vested interest in keeping her at least somewhat healthy and functional, because they all exist on her payroll. There are a lot of people in, like, chain of command positions who could argue with this person and advocate to get her into treatment if this became a situation where she would end up needing it in an emergency, a lot more so than for the young girls and women who will watch her, hear her say how great she feels while she looks like this, and then attempt to emulate looking like this. Again, even if she is genuinely struggling from disordered eating, which I don't know whether or not she is, she has better insurance coverage. I'm certain she would have better access to try out therapists until she found a match that suited her and felt productive. And none of that is a given to the little girls who will unwrap a mass-marketed Thinspo doll for Christmas. A doll that will serve the same purpose to them as the pinned photographs from this press tour on Pinterest do to the slightly older teenage Thinspo girls, even though it's not something anybody putting those dolls in the hands of those little girls is actually intended. And think pieces have been written already. The writing has been on the wall that so-called heroin chic is making a comeback, a fashion type often associated with a rail thin sort of body. And you might even have gotten a mid-roll ad for a weight loss drug during this, depending on what kind of ads Google decides to throw your way when you watch YouTube. And while pushing back against imposed beauty standards has always been countercultural, because that's just kind of what it means for there to be a culture, I am immensely concerned with what this comeback of the glorification of thinness looks like when we pair it with an agreement amongst the feminists that we can't talk about it. Feminism exists to fight the culture. Its job, and our job as feminists, is to criticize harmful things and trends in the dominant culture. Feminism doesn't exist because just to be a woman is to be good and unreproachable, and every decision you choose to make is empowering because you chose to make it and you chose that you were doing it in a feminist way. And I guess I'm just increasingly struggling to see what else you're implying other than every woman is a feminist, so every action is a feminist action, if women and the standards they play into with their very, very marketed bodies are just completely off the table for any kind of discussion. I wanted to make this video for the same reason that I often want to try to examine what feminism is supposed to be for on my channel. Because a lot of modern feminism is just a bunch of people handing you glittery pink pliers and asking you to defang yourself for them so that they don't have to worry about it. And then when you say, why the fuck are you telling me this is a good idea? I don't want to pull my teeth out. They tell you that actually we all agreed not to comment on the bloody tooth holes because that's impolite. Thank you so much for watching. I am genuinely very interested to hear what you all think about all of this, if this is something that has already been occurring to you, and especially if you've read from anybody about all of this in a way that helped anything click for you. Let me know. And thank you especially to my lovely Patreon subscribers who got a video yesterday where I was kind of getting my confidence up to actually address this in a video. If you want sneak peeks at future videos or just a way to help support me financially, that's a great option. I also have a coffee if you're into just like a one-time tip or donation. It's a huge help. Eat some food. Don't shut up when things are bothering you. I love you.